Move introduction of third reading of bylaws 1712.
Second. Comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've prepared a few comments that I would like to deliver at this time. First, I'd like to thank our staff for their hard work. This application, they've dedicated about a year and 100 pages of reports, and in my opinion, provided sound professional advice throughout this process. I'd like to thank our community for participating in democracy and letting their views be known at the public hearing through hundreds of letters, emails, and phone calls. And I'd like to thank the Vantreight family for putting agriculture on the table for discussion. Family farming is challenged, and the Vantreights have highlighted this for us. And in the meantime, have exposed themselves far more than the average citizens would. I'd just like to say that I'm not going to be supporting this application moving forward for a number of reasons. I'm compelled to make this statement to both my colleagues on council as well as to my community. As highlighted in the staff report from May, I agree with our staff and their professional opinion that this application is not consistent with the District of Central Sanet's official community plan, which I committed to protect. It is my understanding that we must make decisions that are consistent with our official community plan, or we must amend it. We have received a plan that at best divides the community. I'm worried that by moving this application any further, our community may face potentially significant risk, which could end in litigation. In my opinion, it is irresponsible for me to vote in favor of an application that puts our community in a position where we must defend a bylaw that our own staff have considered inconsistent with our planning documents, principles, and direction. In addition, if this application does proceed, I worry what effect this will have on the morale of our staff. We have heard unanimously from the community that we need to fix farming. In my opinion, this is not the solution. It has been tried in the past and has only got us to where we are today. That is trying it again. It has been argued, and in my opinion with success, that moving this application forward will only exacerbate the problem of speculation on agricultural land and further drive the cost of it up. To whose benefit? Certainly not those who are trying to attain farmland at a sustainable price. Throughout this process, I've heard on several occasions that we need to hear what the public thinks, and that we need to move this application to a public hearing. I have received a report from the public hearing and have done some number crunching. I found the following. Of the 83 people recorded, 43 were from Central Sanet, 40 were from elsewhere. 36 expressed an opinion in favor, 38 expressed an opinion opposed, and for 9 it was unclear one way or another. I think it would be generally acceptable to remove the immediate family from this evaluation, as they will either benefit or be hurt directly from this decision. If we do this, we find the gap widens to nearly 5%, with 33 speaking in favor and 37 speaking in opposition. Further, one could also argue that it would be appropriate to remove the employees from the equation. And if we were to do this, further increases the gap to nearly 10%, with 39% speaking in favor and 49% opposed, with the remainder being unclear. There is a perception that the greatest level of opposition to this application came from outside our community. By crunching these numbers, I have found otherwise. Of those who stated one way or another, 58% of Central Sanet citizens stated they did not support the project moving forward. 55% of residents from other communities were in favor of this project. These numbers show that the greatest support for this project comes from outside our geographical boundaries, and that the residents and taxpayers of our district who participated in the public hearing were much less likely to support moving forward. In fact, the gap was nearly 20%. If you were putting off making a decision on this application and have moved it forward on the basis that the information provided at the public hearing was paramount, I wonder how we can move this forward. Tie vote fails at our table. How can we ignore this significant message? This application process should build consensus around the project. If the project fails to receive support from our own constituents, and a majority of them who felt it necessary to stand up and speak at a public hearing remain opposed to it, and it also fails to meet the test of our official community plan according to our highly regarded, respected, and award-winning planning staff's advice, I wonder what information has been provided to suggest moving forward is in the best interest of those constituents and our community. In conclusion, this application has had its fair share of attention. It has had more than its fair share of our community's resources, and through all of this, it still has not been able to gather a strong majority of support. It tells me that our community is challenged to see how its merits are going to benefit them. We have been elected by the people to represent them in the process. We must balance their voice at the public hearing with their official community plan and arrive at a decision that is in their best interest, not the applicant. I understand clearly how moving this application forward may provide short-term assistance to the Vantreight family and farm, provide the capital needed to restructure the farm, to innovate their agricultural practices, and maybe even to build the necessary infrastructure for Vantreight IRM. I struggle, though, as did a strong majority of Central Saanich people, our people, to see how moving this project forward can be seen as in the best interest of the community. It has been divisive, driven by emotion, and it is a challenge a community plan that is regarded as reasonable, based on sound, forward-thinking, community-minded principles, and is requiring us to change the plan without changing the plan.
Thank you. Councilor Garrison.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. With respect to the eloquence of my fellow councillors, one thing that reminds me of is that when we talk about statistics and people before, I remember my old economics text that said there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, and I'm not sure, I'm not suggesting that those statistics are incorrect. I'm just suggesting that we all can look at statistics and make our own but from my perspective, I think there's also an issue with respect to how we do represent the greater community. We represent those people that come before us on a public hearing, and we do represent those that don't come up to a public hearing, and the greater community as well. I guess from my perspective, I do support moving this bylaw forward. I think the issues that have been raised with respect to some of the concerns are legitimate concerns, but I think it's our job as a council to weigh the benefits of the application versus the concerns that have been raised. I think that there's one thing that strikes me, that we speak of this in this community, we speak of farming, and we all support farming, and I guess the issue is how do we support farming? We have farming families. There's very few of the farming families left in the community that can actually transcend to the next generation. And I guess, there's got to be a leap of faith to some extent from this council as to where we're going from here. From my perspective, if this bylaw goes forward, if this application goes forward, I would hope that, that now there will be the same farming families farming that land. With respect to this application, there is issues with respect to community benefits. I think that the consolidation of larger parcels is important in this area, because I think what we're seeing, and you can see it every day, where the ALR land gets sold, the parcel gets sold, and we end up with hobby farms with the big forest paddocks, etc. And that's a legitimate use, but it certainly isn't what I would consider farming in my view. So I think that I'm not going to go into a long discussion. I think all of us at this table and the people here have heard all the arguments pro and con. There's no doubt about it. Certainly, we all have different opinions with respect to each of those arguments. I think, and looking at it from my perspective, I think that it will provide a larger chunks of land that will be consolidated. I think that's important. I think that there's some community benefits being provided with respect to the community gardens and some other parkways and other issues that were discussed earlier. From my perspective, I think that I would like to see this move forward. I would like to hopefully see in the future that we have a farming family that can continue and that can be here, many years